Hi there, I'm Christy Hay, and here I'm exploring how Fromm's humanistic religion can guide us, a crisis of freedom, alienation, and love in the 21st century. My presentation aims to inform and excite you about the possibilities for the future as humanistic psychoanalyst Erich Fromm envisioned them. In an era defined by loneliness, polarization, materialism, and performative freedom, his social humanistic psychology offers an urgently needed path forward. His exploration of freedom to combat alienation and to embrace love illuminates why we feel trapped and how we might reclaim our capacity to live more fully and authentically. By hearing Fromm's vision of a humanistic religion, a way of life oriented to reason, love, and being, we can make freedom livable and rebuild loving community. So, as a therapist, I hear the word narcissism almost daily. It's often misused and pathologized way beyond its meaning, yet the concept remains vital. Much like Freud, Fromm viewed narcissism as one's investment towards the self over that of the other. And there's a clear thread between narcissism, individualism, capitalism, and the polarization of ideologies in the US today, patterns that Fromm anticipated decades ago. As a Jewish intellectual who fled Nazi Germany, he understood nationalism as a psychological defense against modern anxiety, a response to the desire for belonging and identity, and a relief from the tension of individual freedom. He described it as group narcissism, where people project their self-worth onto the nation state, gaining security and superiority through collective identification and escaping the burden of individuality and responsibility. With that, some words from Fromm on narcissism and nationalism.
Any very narcissistic group has not only this pathological overemphasis on its own group values, but it shows all the traits of fury and rage and destructiveness when anybody criticizes it. It tends to feel that others are no good. I am wonderful, and I have no mistakes and no shortcomings. And this is actually greatly helped by a mechanism which psychologists call projections, in which I project all my defects on somebody else. And so the enemy is all bad and I am all good.
As a born existentialist trained in systems theory, I've never been able to separate psychology from the social systems that shape me, especially religion. His critique of social structures resonates with what I've witnessed in institutions. My first job was as a music therapist at a residential and day treatment facility where I engaged with the psychological wounds of residential segregation, social inequality, and urban marginalization in St. Louis. I left there to work at Oregon State Hospital, best known as the setting for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. After 8 years there, I can say simply, our mental health system is broken. And my final institutional role before private practice was Chemawa Indian School, one of 4 remaining Native American boarding schools. Originally designed for assimilation, it now strives to restore cultural identity. My time there exposed how little I truly knew about American history and how deeply those legacies continue to wound Native American communities. These experiences across institutions, my own story, and the stories of those I've encountered have put me on a path of a life oriented to human growth, reason, and love. Fromm lived in tumultuous times, through 2 world wars across 2 continents and 4 countries, dying just before his 80th birthday. At 20, he co-founded the Free Jewish Study Center with Franz Rosenzweig and Martin Buber, moving from his Orthodox roots towards a humanistic philosophical Judaism. After a doctorate in sociology under Max Weber's brother Alfred, he trained in psychoanalysis with Frieda Reichmann, later his wife. They co-founded Frankfurt's first psychoanalytic institute, and he was an early member of the Frankfurt School before Nazi persecution forced exile. In the U.S., he taught at several universities, co-founded the William Alanson White Institute, and delivered Yale's Terry Lectures, which were later published. He then moved to Mexico City, establishing its first psychoanalytic training program at the National University. There, he deepened his study of Eastern thought, hosting a 1957 workshop with Zen translator D.T. Suzuki, and they co-authored a book together. After 2 heart attacks, he retired to Switzerland, living quietly in what he called the productive orientation, love, awareness, and biophilia, or a love of life. Across his lifetime, he wrote 22 books linking psychology, sociology, and religion. And for me, his work is a guide to living consciously, lovingly, and freely. This next clip explores his integration of spirituality and psychology and the dangers of not examining our own personal meaning.
So, from a non-narcissistic standpoint, we would be quite concerned with our own spirituality, with our own, if you please, godlessness. But if we can project the whole problem, that we don't feel the values which we profess are real and effective in us, in ourselves, if we can project all that to the enemy, then of course we are safe. Everything is fine. And we can continue with a narcissistic picture of our own perfection.
In this playful image from Logos Journal, Fromm is drawn as Freud's analyst, capturing his critique of Freud's subversive, drive-focused view of human beings. By 1937, Fromm had deviated with his own method, analytical social psychology, and he never really left it. In his semi-autobiographical work, he wrote about the impact of Sigmund Freud and Karl Marx. Freud opened a new world for me, the world of the unconscious, while Marx provided a framework for social liberation and total humanization. So Freud gave him the inner world and Marx the outer one. Fromm bridges psychology, existential questions of self, religion, spirituality, and social critique, offering theories rooted in social reality. I see him as an early PRC thinker with an added social emphasis. The human nature is social, the social nature is human. Now, while time does not allow for me to trace all of his influences, feel free to pause to view more of his connections here. And now to break down some of his main concepts. In Escape from Freedom, he shows how modern people, freed from restrictive traditions, experience isolation and anxiety. So we can escape this anxiety through authoritarianism, conformity, or destructiveness. He frames freedom, not just freedom from the constraint, but freedom for becoming, through love, reason, and work that is aligned with life. And for Fromm, religion is a shared system of thought and action that provides a frame of orientation and an object of devotion. So, in this humanistic religion, humanity is at the center of this worldview instead of a deity. Kripal reminds us that religion is a constructed category, not a fixed identity. Here, Fromm sees religion in the psychological social sense as a way people orient themselves and what they ultimately devote their lives to, so that things like nationalism or capitalism can also count as religions in this critical constructed sense. As I understand it, he sees us as both needing the tools of psychology for the self growth and a model of religion for the social world. In this book, based on the Terry lectures at Yale, Fromm contrasts authoritarian religion of obedience and fear with a humanistic religion of growth, love, and reason. He treats God as a symbol for those highest life affirming capacities aimed at becoming more fully human. Of all his books, The Sane Society feels particularly timely. Fromm argues that American-style capitalism, if left unchecked, produces high productivity and comfort, but loneliness and a loss of relationships and genuine freedom. Mid-20th century capitalism, he says, was breeding a marketing orientation where we will become what we can sell. While conformity looks normal, it is a socially shared pathology. For Fromm, sanity means meaningful work, community, and policies that serve being over having. This book reads as a warning about the trajectory of U.S. capitalism and its psychological and spiritual cost, and this he wrote 70 years ago. This popular book was my first exposure to Fromm's work and starts out with the line, "The reading of this book would be a disappointing experience for anyone who expects an easy instruction in the art of loving." He sees love as a discipline and a capacity, a care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Love opposes narcissism and commodification. For Fromm, mature love is the practice that makes freedom livable and life meaningful. Let's listen to his warnings and remedies.
Either we attempt to live up to what we preach, or we will eventually deteriorate by the narcissistic worship of ideologies and of the machines and gadgets which we create. This cannot be fulfilled, in my opinion, by a nostalgic return to the 19th century, because never can any society return to the past. I think it can be achieved by looking forward and by trying to achieve a revitalization, or if you please, a renaissance of those values on which our whole culture and society is based. That is on reason and on the humanistic attitude towards our fellow man.
Fromm anticipated many of today's crises: polarization, loneliness, consumerism, and burnout. His legacy lives on through psychotherapy and social psychology research on authoritarianism and modern life, as you can see in these recent journal article titles. Across therapy, education, and civic setting, a humanistic religion aligns well with the trans-religious imperative, moving beyond fixed identities and towards a theology without walls that fosters love, reason, and being. I see Fromm as an early distinctive PRC integrator who is likely less known now because he fell between too many camps. He was perhaps seen as a pop author rather than an academic, and I think maybe was ahead of his time. And like any theorist, he has limits. Some of his concepts are hard to operationalize, and others carry gendered mid century assumptions. Predecessors like James, Freud, and Jung, and his contemporaries like Maslow, May, and Rogers bridge similar terrain. But Fromm believed that the conscious self cannot awaken alone and develops within social structures that are rooted in humanistic ethics. He treats spiritual realization as both psychologically cultivable and socially conditioned. So, in other words, the more that join the social movement, the more impact on the individual and collective growth. I am already on board the renaissance of Fromm's vision in my life and research, hoping to continue to use his work to critique where we are and imagine what might come next. Fromm's vision offers us a way through today's crises. It calls us to take freedom as a responsibility and a purpose, to heal alienation through genuine connection, and invigorate love of humanity and nature as a disciplined practice of care, respect, and presence. In a culture driven by having and performing, Fromm guides us to evolve from our individual and collective narcissistic states and accept reality as it is, opening the possibility to the kind of self overcoming Nietzsche associated with the Übermensch. And now, some final
I
words.
think what can save us from the worship of new idols, namely that of race, creed, and nation, and technical gadgets, is indeed only a new humanism and a new rationalism, which, however, differs from the rationalism of the 18th century by not being naive, but by being utterly realistic, if you please, cynically realistic. And that indeed, that such a revitalization would result in a paradoxical blend between faith and utter realism. Thank you.
Fromm's humanistic religion isn't a creed, but a practice. Lived daily, it converts freedom into aliveness, heals alienation with love, and perhaps gives our century a saner path. Thank you, be well, and love big.